All right.
All right. So, Dr. Tiff, thank you so much for joining me and
Thank you for having
being
me.
open to being a part of the Pleasure Principle. I'm so excited to share this content with Black women and to talk about this subject as a formerly extremely prude and repressed Black woman. I am
No,
really
Brandi,
enjoying.
not you. Come
Yes,
on,
that was
girl.
me. And so I'm it's really excited about it. Like I literally had my first orgasm at 44 and I'm 44 today. And I gave it to myself. Like I promise. Yeah, I
Why
promise.
have we not had this conversation before? Because I could have got this to you about 10 years ago. But
Listen.
you know what? In its own time, it comes when it wants to. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So we talk about sex therapists and sex therapy. Can you talk a little bit, describe in layman's terms specifically what you do and how you can help Black women and their partners?
So I guess we talk first about what I do not do. I do
Okay.
not have patients come to my office and watch them have sex and critique their performance and things like that. Most people are coming because there's some sort of sexual hiccup going on in their relationship. So maybe things were fine, but then they hit a snag where I'm having difficulty orgasming, or I'm having difficulty obtaining or maintaining an erection, or my sexual desire after the baby has gone downhill. I don't feel like being intimate with my partner anymore, or there's some sort of trauma that I had years and years ago, and it's starting to rear its ugly head in my present relationship, even though this relationship is great. So people kind of end up in my office for a myriad of reasons. I am a licensed psychotherapist, so my background is in mental health. My master's is in psychology. My doctorate is in human sexuality, though. And so that extra education, that extra layer of credentialing has led me to becoming a sex therapist, in which I not only deal with some of the psychological components of why your relationship or you as an individual might not be achieving your best self, your best life, whether that's financially, romantically, relationship wise, socially. But I can also delve into the sexual problems that individuals and couples may have, which could be, any of those things that I mentioned. So when you're looking for a sex therapist, look for someone, and we all should be, but the reality is sex therapy is a certification, and I say that as a distinction. It's not a license. So
Mhm.
certifications are not necessarily state regulated,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily have to go through a licensing process. I go through a licensing process for my mental health credentials every 2 years, meaning that I have to obtain a certain number of continuing education, and making sure that I'm up to date on the latest in everything that's going on from a mental health perspective. Anyone that you're dealing with that is certified, no matter where they're getting their certification, they probably have taken some courses, they may have taken a test. But usually, all that is, in many cases, I won't say all, what's required is them passing that particular test, and that might be 70% pass, 80% pass, and then paying some dues
Mhm. Right.
every couple years. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, you can be certified in something and not licensed.
Right.
So I'm saying all of that to say, if you want to look holistically at what might be going on with you, I would look for a licensed professional who is certified in the area in which you want to treat. Because it does make a world of difference.
Yeah.
And in particular, and I know this is a very long-winded answer to your question, Brandi, but go with me. In particular, many of the sexual disorders that I deal with. So let's say you brought this up. Okay. So
Mhm.
I'm just going to go with this.
Okay.
Okay. And we're not talking about you, but we're
I mean,
just
but
talking in
if we
general.
want to, that's fine
If
too.
I
I'm
hit a
always,
nerve, you can
yeah.
holler. But So
I have my phone on do not disturb. I have no clue.
is
It's
it me?
happening. No, it's me.
Oh,
I
okay.
swear on do not disturb. I do not know how that happened.
It's okay. So when we're dealing with women who, or men, but I'll say women because that's the bulk of my practice, right? When we're dealing with women who say, I have never had an orgasm in my life, or I have difficulty having orgasms, um, that is called anorgasmia. Two questions or two things that I like to get out of the way. Is this something that is across the board? You have never ever had an orgasm? Because that's primary anorgasmia. Secondary anorgasmia is, well, I've had one, but only with toys, or only while I'm on top, or only from behind. So that means you can have it, but the conditions just have to be like super perfect.
Right.
So when I'm looking at that, if it's secondary orgasmia, it's a little bit easier to treat because I know that the plumbing and everything is working. It's just very specific. So we have to get it out of whatever rut
Right.
it's
Right.
in, right? And that's pretty normal. That's very common for a lot of people. Having never had an orgasm, this is why you want someone who's a licensed and certified, or at least a licensed professional. Many of the sexual disorders that we deal with can be can stem from biological, psychological, or social issues.
Mm,
Biological meaning there's some physiological thing that's going on. So perhaps I'm on a medication that stifles my orgasm, and that's why I'm not having it. Or some hormonal changes are happening, and that's why I'm unable to have an orgasm. So the biological stuff we have to look at. The psychological, I'm gonna come back to the psychological. But the social is more of the relationship stuff.
mm,
So I'm not having an orgasm because my partner keeps doing something that completely annoys me during sex, and I can't even concentrate on it because he's licking here and I don't need him to lick there. But I haven't told him.
right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So then that's a therapeutic issue because if you're not communicating with your partner, what else are you not communicating with them about?
Yeah.
And you want someone to kind of delve into that because that's probably recurring in other areas.
Right.
Now, I skipped the psychological piece because this is where the mental health professional in me starts. It's my time to shine because
Right.
many of the women, and again, Brandi, I am not talking about you, I'm just talking in general, okay? Many women who come in and tell me I have never ever had an orgasm before, a lot of them have control issues.
Mm-hmm.
They like to be in control. They have difficulty letting go, which is what orgasm is, right? They
Mm-hmm.
have difficulty letting go in other areas of their life.
Mm.
It's not until it shows up in the bedroom that they pissed off about it though. Because they like being in control.
Right.
They
Right.
like they like having things their way. But
That.
orgasm is very different. You have to be able to let go. You have to be able to relax. You have to be able to be present and not worried about anything else. And then it comes.
And then it comes. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you got me like in two different
I
places,
know.
like where I'm trying to go. Um, so I
It
want to
be
go
like
back
that
to
sometimes.
something we talked about off before, off camera before we started recording. I talked to you a little bit about just Black people in general being sexually conservative. And so there was an article, and it is an old article from Ebony in 2013. The title of the article is What Our Taboo Sex Says About Us. And it suggests that Black Americans are very conservative when it comes to sex. And as I told you, I have been very prudish, conservative. And after you kind of give your thoughts on that, I'll share some of my thoughts about why I think I've been like that, like how I was groomed
Oh,
to
of
be
course.
very sexually conservative. So do you agree, disagree, and kind of explain?
I think so, but I also think that it depends somewhat on the area of the country that you live in.
Mhm.
And also if it whether or not your family is ready to release some generational trauma and curses.
You better say that.
Because I think much of what we gather and carry with us into our young adult years, it stems from what our parents gave us, or what those who raised us gave us and told us. So many of us, especially in this Bible Belt area of the South, grew up heavily in the church. I don't know about you. Well, I kind of do know about you, but like I was in church every Sunday. And when I was really little, I would say maybe junior high. I mean, I'm sorry, elementary school. I vividly remember we had two Sunday services,
Mm-hmm.
one in the morning, and then you came back at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was Wednesday night Bible study prayer meeting. I was in the youth choir, so I had a practice. I was literally at church probably at least 4 days a week, 3 to 4
Yeah.
days a week, every week. And so you can imagine that culture became a very heavy part of my life. I'm thankful for it. It
Right.
definitely rooted me in my faith and makes it so that I can't escape it.
Definitely.
but also, the messaging that we got from that, no one was in church talking about real, to be honest, they didn't talk about sex a whole lot at church.
Mm-hmm.
But you knew what was right according to the church and what was wrong. And our parents really did instill in us nothing about pleasure, okay? Nothing about fun. Um, and a lot of times it was nothing about like the functionality of it. The
Right.
message that we repeatedly got was a couple of them. Don't get pregnant,
Yep.
not until marriage,
Yep.
and good girls don't do that.
Whoo! That's the one right there.
That was the
That
button.
is the one that had me repressed and like this. Like
Mhm,
even in my marriage, it was like good girls don't do
mhm.
these things. So yeah,
And
that's
they
that
messed us
one.
up. They messed us up because we grew up thinking a certain way about other young ladies who might not have had the same messaging,
Right.
who were taught to love their bodies, that pleasure is a very real, common, natural thing, and that as long as you protect yourself and you're well educated on what's going on, you can have a safe, happy, enjoyable sexual experience. But no, there was all types of bitches and hoes, and I can't believe her. She slept with this person. That like, but we were the ones with the issue.
Right. We were the ones
We
that
were the
were,
ones, and
yeah.
we had no idea.
And
And
it
we had
took
no idea.
so long to get there, right? So I remember that same message you just talked about. Good girls don't do that, and so
Mhm,
you always say, "I would want to try stuff." I never even tried touching myself until I was in my
mhm,
late 30s.
mhm.
Like it was like masturbation. Ugh, who does
Oh
that?
yeah, no, we don't do that. And
Yeah,
then let's break it down even further, Brandy, because you asked specifically about Black women. There's another layer to that good girls message, and it is that Black people don't do that.
right.
Black girls don't do that. That's something that white girls do.
Yeah,
And that can't, masturbation is under that umbrella. Oral sex was
yeah,
under that umbrella as well. Anal sex definitely was under that umbrella.
yeah.
Those are things that they did, but we don't. We don't do that.
Nope. And so it's so funny. I was watching a video on TikTok, and it was a black girl on there talking to her grandmother about sex. And so the grandmother basically said that, like, you don't,
Mhm,
she said, so you let her, because she had a partner. She said, so
mhm.
you let her put her mouth on your hole? And so it's just so it was funny, comical to see, but it reinforces that messaging that you get as a child, that you don't do that.
Mm-mm.
And so I want to go back to some of the things, something you talked about before. We talk about trauma and how life trauma and mental health can impact your sexual desire. Can you talk
Sure.
about that a little bit?
Sure. So, um, I tend to think about our lives in terms of chapters, right? There are certain chapters in our lives that whew, we wish we could go back and do over, but some we just wish we could revisit and appreciate for, where we are. And then there are other chapters that we wish we could forget.
Mhm.
If you've ever read a I'll say a good book or watched a movie, and just my husband and I were talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, which
Mhm.
I fell asleep on, but there were reasons. I mean, I'm a lady, okay? I'm a woman. We
Yeah.
fall asleep. We
Yes,
tired,
you do.
okay? So that's no shade on the movie,
Right.
but we're watching it together. He was watching it. I was asleep, but like we were supposed to be watching it together, and like we were even talking about it with another couple the other night, and he was just saying I had to take a break. Like it was too much. I had to go take a lap, I had to walk outside, and then I came back to it. And he's like, he was telling the couple that they needed to watch it, and he's like, do you have to work tomorrow? Because if you do, it might not be the movie to watch, because you're going to need a day to
Yeah.
process and
Mm.
then go back to deal with these people again. And so I think for us, there are many things that, because we kept trudging along and because we ignored what, not ignored, but swept under the rug what might have happened to us.
That was cultural too. We were taught that.
Yeah,
We had to
yeah, like you keep going. And I mean, think about where we come from.
right.
We come from a people that absorbed trauma, but
Mhm.
were forced to keep going
Yes.
no
Ooh.
matter what happened. I
Mm.
could just watch my wife get raped in front of my eyes, and I still have to work for massa.
Yep.
I can watch my husband get beaten and bloodied and even murdered, but I'm still expected to go in there and cook these people food and not poison them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we experience trauma, but then we're expected to keep going. And so when that happens for us, whether it's a sexual molestation as a kid, or a date rape as an adolescent, or just someone exposing themselves to you on a subway, all of these things end up being kind of indentations in those chapters. And
Mm.
depending on what we've experienced prior, some of that stuff and therapy is a whole nother conversation we can get into. But that was another one of those categories
Yeah.
of Black people don't do
I
that.
do. Yeah. What
You
black
know what I mean? We don't go to therapy.
we got a whole list of what black people don't do.
Yeah.
Because we're too strong, because we
Yeah,
keep
because
going.
yes.
Right.
And so we don't do that. So we take it to God in prayer. So we're back to the church again, right? And then the church doesn't necessarily address our trauma, or hadn't,
Mhm. I
doesn't
mean,
necessarily
honestly,
address
they
our,
still don't. I don't think they still do.
right. There's some aspects of trauma that they have historically avoided,
Yes.
because, well, the Bible says this without giving context
Right.
and time, because
Yeah.
it was a different time, and New Testament versus Old Testament, and we're living by these laws, but I thought we didn't have to because Jesus died on the cross. Like, let's put all of that into perspective, and deal with
Mhm.
what is happening to our babies,
Right.
what is happening to our women, what is happening to our young men, and what we as a people, as a collective, are telling them and reinforcing for them when we say Black people don't do that.
Right.
Good girls don't touch themselves.
Right.
Um, you should. This is one I love. Well, you shouldn't have been there, or you shouldn't have had that on, because then that places the blame of whatever trauma I might have experienced squarely
Apparently
on
on
me.
me. Yes.
I am responsible for my own trauma. That's bullshit. You are responsible for attending to the trauma, getting treatment for the trauma, and then releasing the trauma, but you are not responsible
For
for that trauma. That
exactly.
is for someone else, whoever did that to you. That's not
And
your
so how does
responsibility.
that show up then when you're in a relationship and you're not equally yoked from a sexual perspective. So how do I know when I may need to evaluate my trauma because of what's happening in the bedroom?
So oftentimes the sexual issue is what will bring somebody into therapy. Some
Mm,
people are very self-aware and realize, okay, I know, I haven't been able to hold down a steady relationship for, 10 years. And every time we get to the point of sex, then that's where things start to go wrong. So I probably need to go in and figure out why that is, right? Some people are very self-aware and get to the point where they recognize something's holding me back. I need to go. Others can be having a fine relationship with someone that truly loves them, respects them, honors them, cherishes them. And one day during the act of intercourse, having sex, they have a flashback
mm,
of something that happened 20 years ago. It's so random and so different for people.
mm,
Understanding though that those chapters, again, we'll go back to the chapters reference because it's all part of the same book.
mhm,
So a character from
mhm.
the second chapter might pop up in chapter 18. We don't know. A lot of times trauma comes out of nowhere. It is unannounced
Mm.
and it is not convenient.
Right, right.
For some patients, I will see people that, like I said, like I've never had an orgasm, or I just can't, I can have sex with my husband, but if he's behind me, like I just start shaking and having a panic attack.
Mhm,
And that could be from a previous trauma,
mhm,
that I didn't deal with. And a lot of people feel as though they've dealt with something because it's not impacting them. It hasn't impacted them. And that
mm,
doesn't mean that they haven't, it just means that character hasn't shown up again.
right,
Did you actually deal with it?
right.
Did you, was everything that needed to happen, did that stuff happen in order for you to cross over the bridge and be able to, have you even told your partner
Mm,
that this happened to you? And every time he does this particular thing, it takes you back to that time when
right,
someone did this to you and you didn't want them to.
right, right.
So, and that's, again, I'll go back to the having a mental health professional helping you with some of these things, because that's beyond just sex therapy. I'm not even talking about sex at that point.
Right,
I'm
right.
talking about your mind, your body not agreeing with what your mind wants to do. In your mind, you want to be able to have sex with this person, but your body is saying, no, girl.
And and I brought that up because in my marriage I had that issue, right? Like I could not understand why my body was just completely closed off.
Hmm.
But it was some of the things that you talked about. It was some psychological things. It was
Sure,
some social things between the two of us, some damage that had caused
sure.
happened in our relationship. So it took, and I remember we went to therapy, and this therapist was like, it was a white lady. She says, well, you just need to have sex with him. Like that was it. That was her whole thing. Y'all's problems would be solved if you had sex with him. And I'm
Mm-mm.
like, but you're not getting at why I'm not having sex with him, right?
Uh-uh.
Like, you're not helping him understand because I'm telling you, but you're
Right,
not helping us work through the issues. So that's why
right.
I felt
That's
like it was
causing you not to be.
that
And
piece.
so I don't know who this person was, but I would say that this is not the right person for you. Uh, this is not your person.
And one time, and I was like, I will not go back to her.
Mm-mm. And then you walk away from it, because this happens too. You walk away from therapy thinking, okay, it either reinforces Black folks. This is why Black folks don't go to therapy.
Mhm. Right?
Because this person doesn't understand and that's not for us. So I shouldn't have gone in the first place. It reaffirms to your partner, see, I told you, if you would just
Right.
have sex, then this would be, a non-issue.
Both of those things happen.
Yeah. And so, but you are left feeling like, I'm the problem. I'm broken. I'm the reason why this isn't working out. And left with, I either force myself to do something that I don't want to do or I'm not feeling really good about doing, or I lose our relationship, or it goes downhill and it's all my fault.
Yep.
And there's something else that was missing there. My thought, and I would say many good sex therapists and therapists thought would be, I want you to want to have sex.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want you to
Yeah.
want to do it. And your partner shouldn't want you to do it if you're not feeling comfortable.
Right.
Like he or she shouldn't want to for you to feel forced
Right.
to be
Exactly.
intimate with them.
Exactly.
And so my goal really is to help unblock you, unstick you, help you to unravel all of those roadblocks and hurdles that are standing in your way for you getting to be your best sexual self.
Right.
And so a lot of patients will sometimes get frustrated because we're not tackling the sex issue. We're tackling all this mental health crap
But
that they don't want to deal with. But that's the road. Those are the roadblocks that keep you from wanting to have the sex that you want.
yeah, and that's why I felt like it was so important to have that conversation, because I realized how my mental was blocking
Sure.
all of the things like we talked about, the messaging from my childhood,
Sure.
the traumatic experiences from chapter 5 that showed up in chapter 32,
Yes.
you know, and
Yes.
then just all of the damage from suppressing all of that, the mental health issues that developed because I did what I learned and what's cultural for us, and just keep going.
Yeah.
You hit a roadblock, and so it's going to start to show up in other ways. And so I want people, especially Black women, as a health coach, I'm looking at this from a holistic perspective. What
Mhm.
is it in your life that's keeping you from living fully?
Mhm.
And mental health and stress have been, at the top of the list for Black women. I
Sure.
have this survey that I had them do, and that continues to be number one. They're worried about their mental health. They're worried about reducing their stress. Well, I really want you to understand that tackling some of these mental health issues is impacting all areas of your life.
Every single area. Weight, it impacts our weight.
Yes.
It impacts, how we actually show up in the world, how we feel. It in fact impacts performance on our jobs. It impacts all of it. And the strange thing about it is, like, I think we're at a great place right now with mental health, in that we as African Americans, as Black individuals, we acknowledge, wow, slavery was really traumatic. It wasn't this distant thing that happened years and years ago that was awful and wrong. I think people are now starting to get like, that was some really fucked up shit my ancestors went through
And
and
I'm still
passed
carrying
down.
the trauma. Right.
Yeah, and passed all of that down. That's
Yes.
why we work so hard.
Yes.
That's why we have to prove ourselves.
Yes.
That's why we have to do 50, 60, 70 times more than the average person, and keep pressing on and not let X, Y, and Z bother us. Meanwhile, other people have those things going on and they take their ass to therapy because they know they cannot carry the weight of that. They have to get it off of them.
Yeah. Yes.
So the moment that we turn that corner and recognize, because I think many women, especially, and men, are now noticing, like you said, wow, I'm depressed. Wow, I'm really anxious. Wow, I'm really struggling right now. But to turn the corner and go to therapy is not necessarily front of mind.
Yep.
And we have to get it there.
Yep.
We have to get people there, because that's where the healing happens. Acknowledging is only one step. It's the first step, and it's great. I'm glad we're there. But at what point are you going to do something about it? I talked with someone earlier this morning about anxiety. And I think they're at the point where they can acknowledge the anxiety, and they've had a prescription for meds for a long time, but don't want to take it. And I'm like, but you want to live like this. Like you have, and let's take it back to the church one more time. So one of the messages that we continue to hear, take it to God in prayer, take it to God in prayer, take it to God in prayer, right? And what I know, the God that I serve, right? I can take something to him in prayer, but what do I have to do?
Right.
I still got to work.
How it works is dead.
That part, right? So I can go to God and say, hey, I'm really struggling with my mental health right now. I'm really having a lot of anxiety. And the next thing I know, at my next doctor's appointment, the doctor asked me, hey, are you having any trouble with stress or anxiety? And if I've checked no on that box, guess what? That was an opportunity.
Yep, that
That was
was.
an opportunity for me to get some help. Or when I'm just talking about the stress at work and a coworker pops up and says, you know what, I see a therapist for my anxiety. I'll give you her number. Maybe they can help you. And you tear it up because you don't want to be going to therapy for the anxiety that you've been praying about. Or you end up in the therapist's office or psychiatrist's office and they say, you know what, I think you do have anxiety. Let me write you a prescription for something that will take the edge off. And you don't go fill the prescription because you ain't taking no meds for anxiety because you ain't crazy.
I pop a pill every day. 20 milligrams of Paxil. Thank you.
And what does it do for you? It releases you from that trauma.
I was like held in bondage.
Yes, but that is the trauma that we are all experiencing that we don't realize. We've lived it so much. You know how you have I have
normalized
it.
our
Yes,
trauma.
absolutely. I have a pain. I have something going on with my thumb right now, right? But people live with pain for the longest period of time because they're scared to take care of it, or maybe the fix is really expensive or whatever, and it becomes so normal, so much a part of their everyday that they don't realize how much pain they're in until they're out of it. And then once they have the surgery or take the medication or do what the treatment plan that their doctor's been prescribing for years, then they're like, wow, I didn't realize how much I was carrying, how much pain I had until it was gone. And that's what I hope that people see and hear is that, yes, treatment isn't always sunshine and roses. It's not always going to be fun to unpack all of that stuff. But once you've unpacked it, life is so much better. Sex is so much better.
Sex is so much better. And I can attest to that. I mean, I'm telling you, the pill like literally freed me from feeling like I was a bad girl. It was like those messages, and it was like my mind just got clearer. So
and the reality is you are your own woman. You're not a girl anymore anyway. You are your own woman.
Right.
And you have, and again, church, you have your own relationship with God. It's not because before too, like, right, we were relying on our mama and mama nims and grandmama's relationship with God to get us through.
Yes.
Because they prayed for us.
Yes.
But see, now you an adult, you got a direct line of communication. You can go to God and talk to him about whatever it is you need to talk about.
Yeah.
And so if there is an issue, guess what? God got your number too, and he will let you know. So this between you and the sweet baby Jesus.
Ain't that the truth? So let's get to some solutions. Let's talk about, so we've talked about, just being repressed mentally around sex. How do we, what are some things we can do to kind of free our minds so that we can really explore sex and experience sexual freedom?
So I think if you are partnered with someone, I think it's a good idea to figure out like where they come from sexually. When we're dating someone, we figure out, oh, okay, where were you raised? Were your parents together? Did you have siblings? Did you move around a lot? What were you exposed to? How deep do we go into people's like dating history, and dating lives and sexual history and what they like and what they don't like? A lot of people attempt to find that information out in the bedroom, like in the act. And it's too late then. I don't need to know that you like licking ass then. Tell me beforehand. So I know I got to prep first.
Right. Okay? We're going to have to work up to that part.
Exactly. I might need you to hold off. I got to get there first.
Right.
This is so ratchet. Like we're talking about God and licking ass in the same little thing. It's a bit much.
I mean, but that's.
They both show up,
It, But I'm saying like that's, it's all a
That's
part
the
of,
dichotomy.
yeah,
That's the
that's,
dichotomy of it
yeah,
all.
yeah,
So I think one is communicating with partners. The challenge with that is unless we have that comfort level, it is very challenging. So in terms of like just generationally and all of the like I think where we can start, whether or not we get there, because I never think it's too late for anybody, but
mhm,
I definitely think we have to change the way that we're thinking about these things, especially for our kids that we're raising
right, right,
and being able to talk to them so that they don't struggle with having these conversations. The last thing I want is for my daughter to like struggle having intimate conversations with a partner and not being able to get what she needs out of a relationship because I never gave her the language or helped her
right,
through this,
right,
or for her to experience some sort of trauma unbeknownst to me and not being able to articulate what happened because I just taught her that was a no-no square as
mhm,
opposed to that is your vagina
right,
and nobody should touch you there. you
right,
know
right, yeah,
we have to be able to start them very young so that when they are our age, this is not their issue. They may have other issues because we all have issues,
right,
but this does not need to be an issue that I pass down to my kid.
right,
I think that, we need to get past the things that we think we don't do because that is someone else's idea for your sexuality.
right,
And I can't accept someone else's idea of what I should be doing in the bedroom before I think about, well, do I like that or do I not? I know I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I kind of like it,
right,
but you like, because who gonna know?
right,
That's my business.
right,
And it doesn't matter that, my girlfriend has never tried it or she's never had one or this, historically we don't do it. If I like it, then who gives a shit? You
right,
know?
right,
You have got to, I think we need to start doing more exploration, especially when we're curious about it. If you're satisfied with your
mhm,
sex life and you love it the way that it is, fine. That's fine.
yeah, yeah,
Nothing needs to
yeah,
change. But if you're not satisfied with it and you're wondering, like, damn, am I missing out on something? Because everybody act like they like this and I don't. Well, you could be. You could be. And it could be something unbeknownst to you, like hormones or your depression and anxiety or your stress level or the fact that this dude just cussed you out 5 days in a row and now he's expecting you to have sex with him and you don't want to. Well, guess what? You shouldn't.
mhm,
That's why you don't want to have sex with him because he's an asshole.
yeah, hello,
Yeah. And so
hello,
that's the other thing. I see that a lot too is like they want to have sex with someone that they should not want to have sex with.
because they're
And
not
they're
the people to you, right?
right. And so they're wanting their sexual desire or their lubrication or an orgasm or whatever to come around when really your body is like, but this ain't a good person.
Right,
I don't like him.
right,
And even though you want me to perform in this way, he's still a jerk. And
yeah,
so then your body doesn't perform, and then you come to the doctor and say, hey, why am I not like I'm having problems with vaginal dryness and lubrication,
right,
or I can't orgasm, or I just don't want to have sex and I really want to save this shit relationship.
right,
I'm not fixing that because I can't fix anything below the waist in that case.
right, exactly.
Because your body is working exactly how it's supposed to. It's your mind that's
It's
fucking
your
up.
mind. And yeah, your mind controls. Like,
Yes.
I got mind control over you, Debo. Your mind has
Yes.
control over you, Debo. You're Debo,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So what I heard was communication, explore,
Hmm.
and get rid of the rules that we've been
Make
taught.
up your own rules.
Make up your own rules for
Don't
your
take
life,
nobody. Yeah,
your
you're an
body, your
you're a
sexuality.
grown ass woman. A
Yes,
grown ass woman. Why are you listening to somebody else born 8 decades ago telling you what you should be doing today
with
when
your
it
body.
doesn't? Yes, with your body. They
Yeah.
lived in a different time, and there's no shade, there's no contempt, none of that. they lived in a very different time. And some things have changed, some things are the same. But it is up, I think we assume our parents' values as
Mm-hmm.
we, that's what we do, right? We teach our kids our values, but it's as they age, it's then time for them to determine and create their own value system. And as
Absolutely.
parents, we understand that I may not agree with it, but it's their life. They have to live that. They have to learn from a mistake. If it is a mistake to make, it's theirs to make.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, I think we have to
I
apply that to the sexual aspects of our relationship.
I agree. I definitely want my children to feel free, and not bound
Mhm.
by rules, because you don't I really believe you learn and experience life and have the best life experiences when you have access to different things. And so if your
Mhm.
mind is
For
closed,
sure.
then you're going to, like we talked about, the opportunities that show up, you're going to be closed off to those opportunities because your
Absolutely.
mind is so closed. So
Absolutely. And and this is kind of off the subject, but like I didn't eat Japanese food until I moved to Atlanta. So 1998. So wait a minute, I was working for AJC at that time. So probably like 1920. No, it was after that. Sorry. No, I didn't eat Japanese food for the first time until I was probably like 23 years old.
mm,
Blew my mind. Like I'd always ate pork or pork shrimp fry or pork fried rice or something like that. Like that was the extent of it, maybe shrimp fried rice. But like I never had like Japanese and hibachi and definitely hadn't had sushi. And it was because my mom was like, that's nasty.
right.
That's nasty. We ain't eating that.
Yeah.
And she was buying. So, but it was the exposure to something different where I was like, oh my gosh. One of my friends just said, let's go to hibachi for lunch. And I don't know what that is. I'll go with you. And if I don't like it, you can have it. Ate it, loved it. And I, in turn, taught my mom something.
Mhm.
So now she goes to hibachi or to Japanese with me, and we can eat together. And she's like, there was black beans was another one. It's all about food with me. I know black beans. Oh, I'm not eating that. That looks nasty. And then I took her to a Cuban restaurant, and she's like, "This is the best thing I have ever tasted. This is
Right.
fantastic."
Right.
Sometimes we are accustomed to things and assume things because of what our parents, our aunties, our grandparents told us was fact and true, and that we did as a people don't do that.
And I think that, and everything with me goes back
Yes.
to slavery. Everybody's like, because slavery. And I'm like, yes, because slavery.
They don't
Because
realize,
we
Brandy,
we
they don't realize.
the boxes that they built for us, and they continue to say no, no, no. We lived in those boxes. We taught our
Sure.
kids to live in those boxes. We didn't explore outside those boxes,
Mm-mm.
and we didn't allow our kids to do it. And so a lot of the rules and the things that we do are, we're so repressed and so conservative about so many things because of the religion, and because of the boxes and all the things that the slave masters kind of taught us. And
Sure.
I mean, even going through Jim Crow, civil rights,
Yep.
like all of those things throughout history, we've constantly been put in these boxes, and it's showing up in how we are so far behind in our thought processes
Right.
and so many different things.
And I think that's it. People struggle with that because they don't see themselves as being in a box.
Mhm.
Because I want to be in this box. I don't even see it as a box because I've always been here. I like it here. It's comfortable. This is what I know. I don't need to explore outside. And it's not until we get to a point where we realize that there's a reason why you're comfortable here.
Mhm.
This is because it's more uncomfortable for other people when you're outside of that box, and they will try to make you feel very uncomfortable so you feel safer being right where they want you. You feel safer. So it makes you think that it's your choice to be
Exactly.
in this box when in actuality that's where they want you, and they just going to make it miserable for you to be outside of it, so you just choose to stay
Mhm.
in those four corners. So I get that. I get that. And I think once we recognize that someone else needs to take responsibility and ownership for the
Mhm.
trauma that they placed on us, that it is not our problem that you were uncomfortable with me being outside of my box. That's a
Yeah.
you problem, and you need to fix. You need to go to therapy and work on
Yeah.
that.
So I got two more things, and one thing that we just talked about. So when
Okay.
we talked about I think just thinking about Black women and the boxes that we create around sex for ourselves,
Mhm.
um, and how powerful, the conversation we just had about other people keeping us in this box. So good girls have sex, good Black girls, Black women have
Yeah,
sex with
another
their
layer
men when they want it, because that's
when the
what they
man want
want.
it. Sure,
You don't have to want it. It's not necessarily for your pleasure. It's for
sure,
them,
sure.
right? And and it's missionary. That's the only acceptable position for a good Black woman. Like, these are the messages, and I don't think anyone ever verbalized that to me, but
Yeah,
as we were talking, all of these things came up in my head, and it was like, this was one of the messages that I got
right.
somewhere,
Yeah, along the way.
and we hadn't even talked about how the media over sexualizes Black and Latino women and what that has done to our psyche, and
Right.
how that's made us want to be, more covered up. Like my mother, I was a 00 in high school. I was wearing a size 4, folding my pants over because my mother didn't want anybody to see my body.
That's so
Like,
funny. And what's funny, like I think about you in high school and I don't remember that. I don't remember you wearing like baggier clothes that were too big, but that was your lived experience. I
right,
appreciate that. But but I also never I don't like as I'm like sitting here trying to picture you, I don't remember you wearing anything form fitting either. But,
mhm,
it's funny how our parents, because of their fear of what could happen, and when you think about it, this is what makes it so wild. It's like we put more responsibility on girls to control the sexual urges and desires of boys.
yes,
It's our responsibility not to entice them, which in turn hints to the fact that boys will be boys, and we teach boys they're just going to have needs and urges and desires and all of this, and if girls entice them, it's the girl's fault. And we're not teaching our boys, yeah, you may have an erection at an inappropriate time, go to the bathroom.
right,
You don't need to show it to everybody.
right,
And you don't need to, if someone looks nice in a skirt, it is not your job, place, or right to comment and oogle and say
mhm,
nasty things to someone. Like, you need
yeah,
to be respectful. So rather than teaching our boys and young men to be respectful, historically it was just, I'm gonna let the boys do what they do and we'll just control the girls. And
girl,
doesn't that happen today in society, even in politics?
yes,
There are a bunch of people that don't want to hold men accountable, but they definitely want to police the reproductive abilities and rights for women,
absolutely,
which is
absolutely,
a whole nother conversation. I know.
girl.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So
All right,
many.
two things. So
Yes.
let's say my man has ED. Is there anything that I can do to help him? And then two, some reasons that I may have low libido and what I can do to increase my libido.
Sure. So erectile dysfunction is very common. Um, and I say that it's very common because what that basically means is I'm not able to obtain or maintain an erection when and as long as I might want to.
Mm,
And that can happen at any stage of life. So, over the course of a male's life, they may experience some form of erectile dysfunction. So, again, this is where finding someone who's clinically trained can help figure out, okay, is this a biological or physiological problem? Is there some medication that you're on? Is it
mm,
diabetes? Which a
mhm,
lot of people who suffer from diabetes also suffer from erectile dysfunction.
mhm,
We
mm,
can get back to that. Is this a function of an illness? Is it psychological? For some people, they have end up with performance anxiety, basically. So
mhm,
they have the erectile dysfunction the one time, maybe a couple or a series of times. And then now they're thinking so much about the erection and are they going to be able to maintain it? And is it going to be good enough, hard enough? And I'm not even enjoying what's happening in the meantime. I'm not enjoying my partner. I'm not making sure that like we're both enjoying the pleasure of the moment. I'm just stuck in my head thinking about the erectile dysfunction. And because of that, I'm so anxious about my performance that I can't perform.
Right.
Right. Or I I found out that my wife was having an affair
Mm.
and with someone else. And even though we're trying to get back together, every time we have sex, I keep thinking about the affair
Mhm.
and I can't get an erection.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? It may be that you need to deal with the
Yeah.
affair and
Yeah.
the erection. So ED comes just like any sexual disorder, really. It can come from so many different places. And so my job is to really figure out which one it is. So to answer your question about how can I help my partner if he has ED, let's figure out where the ED is coming from and why it's happening. Um, because if it's let's say diabetes issue, you can do a whole lot,
Mhm.
but you're not going to get rid of that.
Mhm.
That's something that he needs to work through with his doctor.
Mhm.
Yes, you can help with eating and exercise as the health coach in the
Mhm.
relationship. You
Yeah.
can help with those things. But if it's an issue of like blood flow and things like that, he absolutely needs to see his physician, perhaps even a urologist, to get that part under control. So, erection in and of itself is blood flow going to the penis.
Mm.
So, if you've got a blood flow issue, and people with cardiovascular diseases, blood pressure issues. Blood pressure is another one too, Brandi. So
Mm.
with blood pressure, many folks, especially in our community, right, have high blood pressure,
Yeah.
and they're on what low medication to lower their blood pressure.
So that's gonna lower that blood flow.
So it lowers the blood flow to the penis. So sometimes when people have like diabetes and high blood pressure, they'll also end up with some form of ED because the blood flow isn't going to the penis as much as it needs to in order to have a solid erection.
Mhm.
I don't want to tell them, right? Don't take your blood pressure medicine
Right.
because then you end up with a heart attack and it's the sex therapist's fault.
Yeah.
No. So that's something they have to. And again, this goes back to the communication and us being able to talk about the things that are bothering us with our physicians.
Yeah.
And so that's one. And then so people then go and say, okay, I'm having this issue. I'm on blood pressure stuff. I'm on diabetes medication. I just need to take a Viagra and I'll be fine.
Mm.
Well, what Viagra does is it rushes that blood flow. And
Mm.
you're someone who naturally has a higher blood pressure, you're taking medication to lower the blood pressure, and the Viagra is increasing it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people that take a Viagra but aren't doing it under the supervision and haven't talked to their doctor about their Viagra or Cialis or their erectile dysfunction are ending up with some cardiac issues now because they're taking something that goes against the medication that they're already taking. So to help, let's go to the doctor. Let's see, find
Yeah.
a doctor you can trust. Let's figure out the why of the erectile dysfunction. And then if it's our affair, if it's the fact that, I'm doing something that's turning you off in the bedroom, if it's, any number of things outside of that you can work with as a partner, then those are the things you work on. And then the other two categories, the psychological and the physiological, may be something that someone else can work through
Right.
with that person. But a sex therapist, and this is another layer to the answer of your question, should be able to give them some exercises to help them maintain erection,
Okay.
depending on the case.
Case. Right.
And so you do that there's some exercises that you would do solo and some with your partner. And then, yeah, without going too far into detail, there are some exercises and things that you can do to help maintain maintain an erection a little bit longer. But the physiological stuff, there's nothing that you as a partner can do.
You do.
They've
Right.
got to do the work.
Yeah. And so low libido for a woman, what could be some causes and ways to kind of get over that?
So low sex desire is probably the most common issue that women report. 80% of women at some time in their life will have low sex desire.
Mm.
That's what the research says. I think that number is higher, because it just like with men, at any given time in your life, your sex drive can be lower. It can be lower because, right now I'm going through cancer treatment, and the last thing I feel like doing is having sex.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a physiological
Mm-hmm.
thing going on. It could be medications that I'm on, some psychotropic medications. We send someone to the doctor for anxiety and depression. They put them on a medication, and the next thing you know, like, they ain't thought about sex in months.
Right.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a medication that can cause it. Psychologically, it could just be, I have a lot of anxiety around sex, so I don't want to have it. Or sex is, and this is back to physiological, sex is painful for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if something's painful, I don't want to do it over
Yeah.
and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's that. Or again, back to the, I don't like this person, yet I'm stuck in this marriage or stuck in this relationship, and I just can't make my vagina operate like they want it to. I
Right.
don't want to have sex. My desire is low. And so the question usually is it low, or is it low for this person?
Right. Ooh.
Because a lot of times it's low for this person, but by yourself might be
Yeah.
feeling it all the time, but you just not trying to do it with this person.
Yeah.
So sex desire, again, it's kind of like ED. We need to find out the why. And sometimes finding out the why is very simple for folks. Like, they can pinpoint it, especially if I give you a whole bunch of examples. Oh yeah, that's why, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But for some, they may need to see their OBGYN. They may need to do some psychotherapy. They may just need to kind of navigate what's going on in their relationship to figure out why this is such a turnoff or a roadblock for us.
Yeah.
There was a female
Viagra.
Viagra-ish pill that came out a few years ago. I don't think it really ever had legs, and the reason why there. So okay, so with men, we think about sexual arousal,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's directly related to like the penis and erection and ejaculation, right? And
Right.
so Viagra is very good with the functionality of that, because again, it's working with getting the blood flow to the penis to make it hard so that you can maintain an erection and you can have the sexual performance that you want. With women, we rely very heavily on our motivation to be sexual, our desire, and it's a lot more mental than it is physiological. Yes, there's blood flow going to the clitoris and to the vulva, but it's not in the same manner, in the same outward manner that it does with the penis. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our motivation to be sexual is kind of internal and in the mind. So to give women a pill that would increase blood flow to an area,
It's not. Yeah. It's not that
it ain't
simple.
working with everything that's going on up here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think that, we still have a long ways to go, and they really should work on that. Clinicians, laboratory people,
Mm-hmm.
chemists should really work on something that will help with women's sexual desire, because it's a very common problem. And a lot of times it doesn't. Sometimes it does have stuff to do with the partner, but a lot of times it's very much hormonal and psychological. The reasons why we don't, and physiological. I mean, there's so many changes that our bodies go through,
Yeah.
um, that just make it not a fun experience, or not
Right.
something that we look forward to and crave. And I
Right.
think many women want to feel that way, but for a myriad of reasons, they can't get there on their own. So it's very common, and there's so many different reasons or things to do. But I think the underlying current that I experience with people, if they communicate better, they're able to have better sexual experiences.
So, any last words? Anything that you would like to make sure Black women in particular knew about sex, releasing, being able to experience like the best sex ever?
So two things. One is, and I always talk about this, just because I think it's so important. And this isn't necessarily for you. It might be for your kid. Well, it definitely is for your kid. Talking to them as early as possible about sex, as early as possible. And I'm not saying like you tell them all about the technique for,
Right.
oral sex or something at 5 years old. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that as they get older, as they're in the bathtub when they're really little, make sure they know, okay, this is your vagina or this is your penis. Like they should know their body parts. They should be able to say it without flinching and without giggling, like, this is what this is. It should be normal for them. As they get older, talking to them about differences and why we cover up and who gets to touch. Like those conversations need to happen at an early age, because what happens is if I can talk to them at that age, they still think that we know shit. If you start that conversation 11, 12, 13, the parents aren't cool anymore and they don't know anything. And I'm already getting this information from my friends. So, all that information you're giving me is old. Start talking to them about this stuff when they still think you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And they're not afraid to ask you questions. At 13, they're not asking you anything.
Right.
And you want to have those conversations early so that you're raising someone that can initiate those conversations as an adult and isn't afraid to.
I was just about to say they feel comfortable as they get
They
older.
do, so that they're not in the position that you are, trying to figure out how to articulate what's going on with me to my doctor, to my partner, to whomever. And then the second thing that I would say I need all women, and not just Black women, but especially Black women, because we don't do these things. All women to know is that lube is your friend.
Lube is your friend.
Lube is your friend. We are so conditioned to think that we have to be superheroes.
Yeah.
And that we have to do everything, and everything needs to work perfectly and promptly and as planned. And sometimes the vagina doesn't get the memo and doesn't want to lube up or isn't wet enough. And we struggle through experiences that are painful when really
all we had to do was get some lube.
Get some lube, child. So lubricant is one of the most, I think, underused. It's not a convenient thing to get. Like they have just a few options at the grocery store when you're there every week, or, certainly you can buy some stuff online. And there are a lot of lube brands out there, but I think there could be more. They could be more readily available and they could be better. And we need to use more lube. Sex is better when it's wetter. And I think that I think lube is really your friend. You don't have to be a superhero. And I think that we need to see it as something that enhances the sexual experience as opposed to an aid when we have a dysfunction or our bodies aren't lubricating anymore. As we age as women, as we try new things like anal sex, the anus does not self-lubricate like the vagina does. So you absolutely have to have lube if you're doing that. As we're taking certain medications, we may experience more vaginal dryness. Lube is really your friend. It can be. And we should be using it more. And it shouldn't be a thing where, okay, it's just for old people. Anybody at any age, it even if you don't have a problem with lubrication, it can enhance the experience.
All right.
And we can talk about that in the next episode.
Yes, we're gonna have another one. I'm like, this has been amazing. Thank you. I honestly did not think we would take this much time, but this conversation has been extremely interesting to me. Just the cultural part of it, talking about the sex, the mental health piece that I'm so passionate about. And then because I've just been born again, I'm not sexually repressed anymore after 44 years. And
Amen.
honestly, it's more like when 30, because,
Mhm.
but
Mhm. Mhm.
regardless, the point is, it took a very long time to get.
But you're
Um,
here.
I'm here. So thank you so much, Tiff. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. I love you.
I appreciate and love you as well. And I'm so proud of you and all of your success and the things that you are doing. Just as a health coach and just as a woman, like you are out here killing it. And I love to see it. And I can't wait to see, everything that comes from this and everything else that you do, because I think that you're a phenomenal, phenomenal human being.
Thank you. The sentiment is definitely shared. I love you and will always be here to support you.
Thank
And
you,
just so
babe.
happy that our paths crossed in seventh grade. So
I know. Isn't
I
that
feel like
crazy?
we're so old now, right? And I'm like, I
I
know
know. I
more than half
know.
my life.
I
So
know. It's so crazy. And it's wonderful to be able to connect with people as adults too. And as we start to explore different avenues of our lives and to be supported and supportive in those avenues is just really a joy and a pleasure to be able to do. So I salute you and I am so thankful for you and everything that you bring to the universe. And I look forward to the light that you continue to give us all.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Love you, girl.
Love you.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.